MG Rob back with you, and today we're going to be playing around with my 59 MGA coupe. Now, you guys might be looking at all this stuff, and you might be a little bit confused about all of this, and wondering what all this has in common. And other than all this being other people's junk, at this point it really has nothing in common yet. So I've had this idea for a while now of building an MGA coupe into a fastback, kind of similar to what the factory did for the Le Mans cars, but my own style. And I thought, you know, this car would be the perfect one to do that with because it's already pretty much a piece of crap. If I screw it up, I didn't screw up a salvageable car. But it's been something I haven't quite figured out what parts to use, and I wanted to try to figure out what kind of a rear window to use, quarter windows and things like that. And walking around a car show late summer last year, I found a set of quarter windows that I thought was going to work perfectly for this project. And that is Karmann Ghia, or Volkswagen Karmann Ghia, for those younger viewers who may be watching this and may not know what that is. The height of the window was about right. The length of the window and the shape actually I thought lended itself pretty well to this project. So I started kind of keeping an eye out for a parts car. No hurry looking for anything, just see what was out there. And I just never was able to find a cheap parts car that I could get this stuff from. And everything I did find was out of state, and I just didn't have the time. I wasn't willing to say go out of state for a project that I wasn't necessarily going to start anytime soon. And then 15 minutes from here, found a guy who had a cut up Karmann Ghia. Now I didn't, unfortunately, cut it right through where the quarter windows are actually, because he cut it like right here. But the price was right on the parts to where I can take this stuff and use it for proof of concept, or maybe still use it. We'll find out as I start working. And at least get me moving forward and finding out whether I can make this thing work. And I had just set the roof up there and then realized really quickly that the rear window from a Karmann Ghia obviously wasn't going to work. So I had to figure out something else for a rear window. So we actually took a pattern off of a Volkswagen Beetle and thought, you know what, that just might work. So we found a car that through a friend of a friend kind of a thing, that had one sitting, had been sitting for many, many years, and he was just going to haul it off of scrap. And he said, sure, come out and cut whatever you want off of it. Well, in between him saying that and us actually going out there, the car got vandalized and the window got busted out, so we didn't get the window. And all this dented stuff here wasn't like that when we was originally going to go get it. And it turns out it's rustier than I expected, but I can still use it for proof of concept. And if that does work, it's a lot easier to find a Beetle to cut a rear window out of than it is any kind of Karmann Ghia stuff. So what we're going to do today is start figuring out to do proof of concept on the car to find out, can I make all this stuff work on this car and actually not look all goofy. So our starting point here is really going to be just figuring out if this actually even looks right, or as right as I think it's going to look. So we're going to put this up here. I figure we kind of keep this angle roughly the same as this, and it's just a matter of figuring out exactly where it wants to be so that the line across here looks pretty good, that it continues down, and then exactly what the angle is going to be and how far forward or back we're going to place it. But that's kind of the general idea of the window, somewhere in that neighborhood there. But I do have an additional little issue in that this has a slight arc to it this way. So it's really hard to look at it now without this being cut out, but it gets into where the fender line's at. So we're going to have to figure something out on that part there. So now I got the common gear roof sitting on here, and it's sitting roughly centered at the moment. And of course you can see that the MGA roof has a whole lot more crown into it than the Karmann Ghia roof. So you kind of have to imagine this line being a lot lower without me chopping this up. And I'm not really wanting to chop on it just yet because I don't want to cut it somewhere that I'm going to end up wishing I hadn't cut it at. So we can kind of guesstimate it. If we pull that down, you know, something more along those lines like that as far as the line is concerned. But obviously the angle is now a little off. So we're going to have to, in order to really get the lines, we're going to have to cut this thing up a little bit. And so where this is pretty narrow through here to get it to go down and sit where we want it so that this is more in this line here. But that's where it's all imagination here at this point to figure it out. So once the roof's sitting on here and we look at the width of the rear window of the Karmann Ghia, you can see that on the sides here, it really comes right into the fenders here. So that's not going to work. So my thought was, let's try the Beetle rear window. So my hope with this rear window is the width seemed to be about right to stay between the fenders, and that since it's a little flatter here and more curved here, maybe this curve would reasonably mimic the roof somewhat, and then this could go to the back and be easier to transition this into the rear boot area. So let's see what we got. So obviously the curve of this part of the window does not work very well. It's way too curved. So that kind of shoots that plan. Now the curve on this actually matches this part of the car really well, but that doesn't. I don't know, let's see what it looks like the other way around. The curve on the window actually works pretty well up here, but then this is so much of a curve, I'm not sure if I can make that look right or not. See, we got a whole lot of curve here, which doesn't really match this. So I got to kind of figure that out. It's either find something else to do, another car to cut this out of, or I can kind of match this window frame size here, still use the seal and the trim stuff from the Volkswagen, which will fit the car's looks pretty well, and remake this whole bottom section and do this much flatter. And I can do it, then I can do it either direction, but then I'd have to use a Lexan rear window rather than the Beetle glass. So we'll have to think about this one for a little bit. Maybe you do a little bit of trimming, a little bit of cutting and adjusting and see what we can make happen. So trying to put the two pieces together, I've got something in mind I'm thinking about. Since we're going to be redoing this edge anyway, if we're going to use this, I'm thinking I can just cut this out completely and use the edge of this roof put into there. That gives me the same seal edge that was in this. And it's already pre-made, I don't have to make something, and that actually mimics this reasonably well to start with. So this is kind of getting us a little closer to what we're looking for, but I need to cut this up a little bit more to get a better visualization. So I'm gonna get started cutting. All right, well, let's see if this looks any better at all. Any more like what I'm looking for, at least. Kind of getting there. We got to realize everything is going to come down some yet because the roof line is way too high at the moment, but kind of starting to get a shape more like what we're looking for. So after a few more hours of playing around and trying some different things and starting over and then going back to what we started with, done some more cutting and trimming, and this is what we've come up with so far. It's not quite there, but we're on the right track. I'm not happy with the quarter window because no matter how I place it, it either doesn't look quite right on the top with this line, or it doesn't look like quite right against the fender. But I'm not sure that we can find any other windows on any readily available cars that we can salvage them from that would actually fit any better than that. So we might be sticking with these. We've been thinking about a name for this thing too. We're thinking about calling it the MGA 2 Ghia Fastback, since it is a combination of an MGA, Mustang II, and Carmi Ghia. And of course, the Mustang II's top trim level was Ghia. So it all ties together. If you guys like it, let me know. If you don't like it, let me know. If you got better suggestion, let me know. So at any rate, I think this is going to be the end of the video for today. You can stay tuned, see what we come up with next.